Let's talk about the time when Eugene England, a very popular BYU professor, was denounced by Bruce R. McConkie, a very doctrinaire LDS apostle. Now, Eugene England is one of my true heroes in the Mormon tradition. He was the founder or one of the co-founders of Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought. He taught literature at BYU for 2 decades, and he aimed to model faithful and charitable dialogue between people of diverging perspectives. But there's one thing that he's probably known more for than all else, and that's his conflict with Bruce R. McConkie, then an apostle in the LDS Church, in 1981. The dispute was rooted in diverging theories of the nature of God. It started with Eugene England disagreeing with Joseph Fielding McConkie, Bruce R.'s son, an ancient scripture professor at BYU. It escalated to a public talk from Bruce R. McConkie, the 7 Deadly Heresies, and then it culminated in a private Apostolic Rebuke, a letter that I'll dissect later in this video that you don't want to miss. It's a fascinating story in its own right, but it also tells us a lot about broader tensions within Mormonism, ecclesiastical control versus individual freedom. This is how the wonderful historian Claudia Bushman put it. The McConkie-England disagreement revealed the division between theological conservatives and liberals within the believing camp and, in the larger sense, the tensions between authoritarian control versus free expression. And so in this video, I'll provide some brief background to Eugene England. I'll explain the theological basis for his disagreement for the McConkies. I'll then highlight the conflict that resulted, including the damning letter from Bruce R. McConkie. And then I'll touch on some of the lasting legacies. Let's dig in. Eugene England was born in 1933 to a wealthy and connected LDS family. He and his wife, Charlotte, an intellectual titan in her own right, served a mission together to Samoa. He then served in the Air Force and received his graduate degrees from Stanford University in literature. While there, he co-founded, alongside Wesley Johnson, Dialogue, a journal of Mormon thought, in 1965. It was meant to provide a venue for uncorrelated voices, especially at a time when the church was pushing correlation. He has since become one of the journal has since become one of the most important cultural repositories for Mormonism in the last 60 years. If you haven't checked out Dialogue, I strongly encourage it, and please go and subscribe because, like I said, it's the most important cultural repository for Mormon thought and practice. His journal, the Dialogue, also got him in trouble with church leaders who were not too fond of uncorrelated approaches to the faith. But the journal represented his mantra of dialogue. This is how he put it early on. Quote, "We must truly listen to each other, respecting our essential brotherhood and the courage of those who try to speak, however they may differ from us in professional standing or religious belief or moral vision, and then our dialogue can serve both in truth and charity." After receiving his PhD from Stanford, he taught at St. Olaf College in Minnesota for a few years. It wasn't the best fit. He was much too Mormon, and he wanted to teach his Mormonism, which was not well respected by the institution, let's call it. So eventually he was hired by BYU in 1977, where he taught for 2 decades. He became one of the church's most accomplished essayists, and some of his essays are still must-reads for Latter-day Saints today. But his ideas weren't always, let's say, respected or accepted by more doctrinaire members, including apostles. By the way, if you enjoy this type of nerdy historical scholarship, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Every Monday I do deep dives on particular episodes like this one. On Wednesday I connect the past to the present, talking about politics and media and television and movies and how religion and history frame our contemporary world. And on Friday I pull back the curtains on the historian's craft, either looking at new books, interviewing authors, dissecting classics, or looking at the primary sources resources behind common arguments so that you too can become an expert. And if you want to give back and support this channel, you can become a member, where for a very nominal fee, you get early access to the videos, you get little icons next to your name when you leave comments, and most importantly, you can sleep better at night knowing you are supporting public-facing scholarship. I also recommend subscribing to my free Kit newsletter and following me on my different social media platforms, especially TikTok and Instagram, where I provide supplemental materials. All of that is free. All of those links are found in the video description. And mark your calendar for June 3rd in the evening, time to be determined, where my next live discussion will be coming from the Mormon History Association conference held in Las Vegas, Nevada, the biggest gathering of history nerds interested in Mormon history of the year. You won't want to miss it if you haven't checked it out yet. All right, let's get back to the Eugene England and McConkie clash. Just a few years after being hired at BYU, Eugene England was assigned to speak to the Honors College students on September 13th, 1979. He titled his address, "The Lord's University." His goal was to find principles from Mormonism's theological past that could be relevant to these students in their learning path and in their time in Provo. It was an optimistic and exciting take, saying that there is something in Mormonism that they could find useful. And one of the key concepts in that address was taken from King Follett's, Joseph Smith's King Follett discourse, which I've done a previous video on, regarding God evolving in knowledge and power, saying that just as God is evolving, that gives an example for the rest of us to continue to grow and learn and progress, because that is a quintessential Mormon principle. This drew on a long-standing Mormon dispute of God either evolving and growing in knowledge, which people like Brigham Young taught and said they found in Joseph Smith, versus God being a full absolute possessor of knowledge, which was at Orson Pratt and others, and especially in the 20th century, Mormon leaders taught. And Eugene England was trying to offer one take on that dynamic. However, there were detractors. The night before he delivered his address, he received a phone call from Joseph Fielding McConkie, the son of the Apostle Bruce R. McConkie, who had gotten a copy of his remarks. Joseph Fielding McConkie taught in the Ancient Scripture department. He told Eugene England that his father, Bruce R., would strongly disagree with the idea, and further that it was heresy. Eugene England, however, in his very dialogue mindset, responded, "Well, why don't you come to the address and offer a rebuttal?" He did this despite his wife, Charlotte, wisely saying this is not a great idea, but England wanted to model civil disagreement to the students. However, when McConkie gave his rebuttal the next day, it was anything but civil. He said that his father, Bruce R. McConkie, and grandfather, Joseph Fielding Smith, would strongly disagree with this idea that people are free to believe what they want, but they can't be teaching such heresies at BYU. And this is how he put it: "I do not see the salvation of BYU in the abandonment of absolutes. And with the prophets whose blood flows in my veins, I refuse to worship at the shrine of an ignorant God." If you know the McConkies, that language sounds pretty familiar. England took these critiques in stride, thanked McConkie for his remarks, and then closed the meeting thinking that the issue was over, but it wasn't. Because as you might expect, Joseph Fielding told his father, Bruce R. McConkie, about it, and Bruce R. McConkie saw this as a threat, this heresy being taught, and so he made it a topic when he addressed the university at a university devotional the following June. Bruce R. McConkie was an apostle at the time, known as being a guardian of orthodoxy, author of the very influential book Mormon Doctrine, topic of another video. And when he delivered his address at BYU on June 1st, 1980, he titled it "The Seven Deadly Heresies." You might have heard this oration before. This is the origins. It's coming out of the dispute between his son and Eugene England, because the very first heresy he highlighted, the big one that he spent the most time on, was the idea of God progressing in knowledge and power and learning new truths. And this is what he said. And I'm going to try to do my best Bruce R. McConkie voice, because that's, what gives the vibe. This is false, utterly, totally, and completely. There is not one sliver of truth in it. It grows out of a wholly twisted and incorrect view of the King Follett sermon and of what is meant by eternal progression. The rest of the sermon is just as condescending and patronizing in distilling what the true doctrine is and denouncing these other 7 deadly heresies. If there's interest, maybe I'll do a whole video on the 7 deadly heresies and how he's actually attacking ideas that have been part of the Mormon tradition, even if he wants to reject them. He also included in this sermon an insult that was deleted from the published version, in which he said that anyone who thought this doctrine, the progressive knowledge of God, had, quote, the intellect of an ant and the understanding of a clod of miry clay in a primordial swamp. Which, even if you fundamentally disagree with McConkie and you see him as a doctrinaire, you gotta admit he had some bars. The talk caused such a storm, in fact, that McConkie was called in by Spencer W. Kimball, the president of the church at the time, who chastised him and forced him to revise his talk to emphasize that these were what he believed were the 7 deadly heresies and that he was not speaking on part of the church. Now, Eugene England, ever the optimist, and probably naively so, still hoped that he could build a dialogue out of this. So he started, in response to Bruce R. McConkie's sermon, he started drafting a new essay that he titled The Perfection and Progression of God, 2 Spheres of Existence and 2 Modes of Discourse, in which he interrogated these past competing ideas without deciding which one was correct. And then he sent that essay to Bruce R. McConkie for feedback. His letter was very humble and deferential. These are some key excerpts. After last fall's lecture, I got a copy of your son's response, studied it carefully, and decided that his strong feeling that I was out of harmony required that I rethink the whole matter. So I have, this past year, carefully and prayerfully gone back over all the pertinent sources I could find and have written the enclosed paper about my findings. But I recognize that I could certainly be wrong, and I could be interpreting Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and others incorrectly, or that subsequent revelation has invalidated what they said. I accept the authority of the living prophets and not only want to be, but assume I am fully in harmony with them, including, of course, with you. If not, I want to be put right. It would be gracious of you to read my paper and give me some response if you feel there is a need. So after he sent off this letter, he left to direct BYU's London study abroad, where, as an ironic note, he was with students in Rome when there was an assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II. Here is a photograph with Eugene England in the background, one of these classic Forrest Gump type moments of popping up in the back of major moments. It was after he returned to London after the Rome trip, where he witnessed the assassination attempt, that he received McConkie's response. But by that time, McConkie's response was actually already circulating in Utah. We may never know how that copy got out, but the letter was probably as shocking as witnessing an assassination attempt on the Vicar of Christ in Rome. McConkie's diatribe, and I do believe it should be called a diatribe, opened with, and again my best McConkie voice, "This may well be the most important letter you have or will receive." And it gets more dogmatic even from there. Quote, I shall write in kindness and in plainness, and perhaps with sharpness. I want you to know that I am extending to you the hand of fellowship, though I hold over you at the same time the scepter of judgment. The rest of the letter includes lots of quotations from him and his father-in-law, Joseph Fielding Smith. He tries to argue that England was misreading the King Follett discourse, But interestingly, when it comes to Brigham Young, he argued that Brigham Young was wrong in his teaching, saying that Brigham Young expressed views that are out of harmony with the gospel. Here is one key quote, saying Brigham Young erred in some of his statements on the nature and kind of being that God is. If we choose to believe and teach the false portions of his doctrines, we are making an election that will damn us. So you see what's interesting, and this is what's going to make this letter of note to other people when it starts circulating. Him acknowledging that Brigham Young was wrong in these teachings, while still trying to say that the King Follett discourse is just misinterpreted. The letter also includes plenty of digs at Eugene England. England always talks about his connections to different authorities that he's tried to maintain relationships, and McConkie tries to strip that down. He says, quote, "Perhaps I should tell you what one of the very astute and alert general authorities said to me when I chanced to mention to him the subject of your letter to me. He said, 'Oh dear, haven't we rescued him enough times already?'" That's a bit condescending and patronizing, but it's nowhere close to how McConkie closes the letter. This famous statement that really reflects the authoritarian nature and the doctrinaire nature that McConkie viewed for church theology. Quote, "It is my province to teach to the church what the doctrine is. It is your province to echo what I say or to remain silent." He went on and said that if you don't fix your ways, I will stand as a witness in the at judgment that you were not willing to repent. Now, England, chastened, wrote back and said that he would follow these instructions. And to his credit, he remained silent on that matter, at least until McConkie died. Yet copies of McConkie's letter were already circulating before England ever received it in London, so it was probably leaked from McConkie's own office. And soon the critics, Gerald and Sandra Tanner, were circulating it, especially the portions, or highlighting the portions, in which Bruce R. McConkie basically throws Brigham Young under the bus. So this letter became a key part of the public discourse around prophetic authority in the 1980s. Now, as I mentioned, England did not write about the nature of God presenting his diverging view again until 4 years after Bruce R. McConkie's death. It is in 1989 that I finally published that essay that he had sent to Bruce R. McConkie for feedback, The Perfection and Progression of God. It was published by BYU Studies in 1989, though he did not share any of the background to it. The fact that it was published in BYU Studies, the BYU's official organ, did show at least some degree of acceptance of that idea. England only briefly spoke about his dispute with McConkie in a 1993 essay on spectral evidence, where he referenced it as a learning opportunity for him, again trying to emphasize this dialogue, this back and forth approach. But there were plenty of other conflicts between Eugene England and church authorities. Eventually, in 1998, England was forced into early retirement from BYU, where he then moved to Utah Valley University and helped found their Mormon Studies program, in part through a National Endowment through the Humanities grant. But that's a topic for another video, all the background of what led England into forced retirement, and I promise it's fascinating. He would soon be diagnosed with cancer, tragically, and died in 2001 at much too young of an age. Shortly before his death, he wrote out a list of names of voices he still hears in his head whenever he is writing and engaging in dialogue, and one of those names was none other than Bruce R. McConkie, which showed how the shadow of that 1981 conflict still stayed with him 2 decades later. I hope you found this video useful. If so, hit the like button and share with others so we can broaden the conversation. I believe that this dispute and its full context, rather than, just the bits and pieces that get passed around, deserve consideration because it captures these central tensions in the Mormon tradition over ecclesiastical control, personal liberty, and of course, the nature of God. In the video description here, you will find a few useful links. One to the Eugene England Foundation, a wonderful foundation foundation that's meant to preserve the memory of Eugene England. They have an essay on this dispute that is very detailed, and I took a lot of information from that essay that I strongly recommend. It also includes links to the letter from Eugene England to Bruce R. McConkie, as well as the famous letter from Bruce R. McConkie to Eugene England. I also include in the video description a link to McConkie's famous 7 Deadly Heresies address. And do let me know if you'd like a whole video focused on that address and the 6 other alleged heresies. If you want more background, I strongly recommend Terrell Givens's biography of Eugene England, Stretching the Heavens, The Life of Eugene England and the Crisis of Modern Mormonism, published by the University of North Carolina Press, as well as the equally excellent biography by Christine Haglund, Eugene England, a Mormon Liberal, published by University of Illinois Press. Eugene England's life is so fascinating and worth interrogation. I have the great privilege to be a co-director along with Jana Reese and Taylor Petrie of the Eugene Summer Institute, which we do every summer, gathering junior scholars and provide mentorship and writing and connections for them to flourish. The same type of cultivation and community that Eugene England was devoted to. If you want more information, I'll also include a link to the Eugene England Summer Institute in the video description. This clash is another reminder of why history remains relevant, that we can learn from the past, and this wrestling with the past and with each other tells us a lot about our contemporary community and where we can go from here.